Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see then what's making the headlines with the Politics Editor of Gal-dem, Moya, Lothian-Mclean, and the PR consultant, Deane. Welcome to both of you. Let's check out the front pages then straight away, starting with the Metro. Come save our bacon. The Metro leads on the government offering 6-month visas to EU meat workers to fill gaps in slaughterhouses. Meanwhile, the Telegraph leads on comments from the Department of Transport accusing unions of holding Christmas hostage as Unite ballots for an HGV driver strike demanding toilets and catering facilities at truck stops. Financial Times reports that a number of leading EU member states are urging Brussels to get ready for what it calls a trade war with Britain if the row over trading arrangements for Northern Ireland isn't settled. The Daily Mail reports Her Majesty the Queen made a rare public intervention on the climate change crisis, saying she is irritated by people who talk but don't do. That's also the main story for the Mirror. Green Queen, Royal Climate Change Blast. The Times also has a story on climate, with Boris Johnson reportedly being told that President Xi of China will not attend next month's critical climate change summit in Glasgow. The Guardian reports that GPs have said the plan to increase face-to-face appointments could lead to an exodus of doctors. And the Star claims a Yeti has been spotted in Marbella, where Boris Johnson was on holiday. We're told he's returned. The Yorkshire Post leads on the North Yorkshire Police Commissioner stepping down from his post after intense pressure in the wake of his comments on the murder of Sarah Everard and women's safety. And the Daily Express carrying a claim that what it calls miracle drug statins have emerged as a surprise additional weapon in the fight against COVID-19. So let's bring in Moya and Alex. Welcome to both of you. And straight to the Telegraph. Unions holding Christmas hostage about conditions for HGV workers, Moya.
Yes, I mean, this is quite disingenuous framing, is it not? This week we've had the Prime Minister saying that to attract talent, certain industries had to put up wages and have better conditions. And yet on the front page of the Telegraph, we're seeing HGV workers demonised for demanding better working conditions, which does not make sense to me. Surely building a better Britain means creating better working conditions, especially in such an isolating job at a time when we've seen droves of drivers leave due to these poor working conditions.
I thought they were pushing at an open door about this. It seems to have been recognised in government that actually, you know, better toilet facilities, even showers on the roads. I mean, all of these things now need to be looked at in comparison with what we're seeing in Europe in order to attract more people to the position. Alex, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think they were going to get a lot of this anyway. And I think what they do is risk public support in taking this position over Christmas. Of course, on the one hand, unions have will always have a certain amount of sympathy amongst people who work, most especially, of course, their members, but wider sympathy too. And if you're going to have a protest, then you want to do it at a time when it's going to have an impact. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you can get a sense sometimes when a union overplays its hand. And you saw that when government was much more confrontational with the unions back in the 1980s. And occasionally you've seen it since. I think the comparison I would draw would be with ASLEF when they were trying to get better deals for train drivers and withheld their labour, much to the chagrin of commuters. I think they're going to get this kind of activity anyway. I think government's pushing for better conditions for HGV drivers and pushing employers for better conditions. So I really just pragmatically wonder if this is the right move.
Yes, the Telegraph saying, or quoting a government spokesman, it would be reckless for unions to hold Christmas hostage and damage the work being done to restore supply chains at this vital time of year. Moya, Christmas, once again, being held as the pinnacle of all things towards the end of the year, to be fair. But, you know, already we're seeing HGV drivers get more money. It's not helping the shortage, though, is it, in many respects?
No, because I think what we've seen, as you mentioned Europe, is that people want better working conditions. That's one of the key findings that came out of sort of pandemic realisation about the way we work. It's not just money. Yes, we should absolutely have fair wages, but it's also working conditions. These people on the road for, you know, ages, they're often isolated. And we've seen truck drivers talk about the lack of facilities, showers, you know, a hot cup of tea when they come off shift. It just makes sense to me that we give them better working conditions. And I think the government trying to put this notion of them stealing Christmas or holding Christmas hostage is an attempt to shirk the responsibilities to give them these conditions.
The government's defence is that much of this has a global nature. the containers in the wrong places around the world, obviously. The Matt cartoon in the Telegraph, you don't still believe in the supply chain crisis, do you? Your parents make it up so they don't have to buy you Christmas presents. Well, who knows if that's going to end up being true. The Independent now online, suggesting it's seen an internal document from Amazon, suggesting it will try and get customers to buy gifts 4 weeks early, believes that the difficulties in supply will continue until the spring. You know, how can this government, or how can governments around the world, try to relieve some of these supply chain pressures, Alex?
Well, it's a global problem, as you say, but we can try and do our best to ease things at this end. And actually, I think Moya's got a point about conditions for drivers in the UK, and that's something we can address. After all, part of the point of our current international situation and Brexit is seeking to make the UK more attractive, not less attractive, for people whose labour is in demand. But on this one, I think that part of what we can do is issue more HGV licences. It's clear to me that part of the problem in the last 2 years has been that because of COVID and because of test centres being closed, we haven't granted HGV licences afresh in anything like enough numbers to let new people come into the profession. Of course, too, we've seen there's a lot of people in the UK, some 300,000, who hold HGV licences and aren't attracted back to it. We've got to try and fix that too. But for heaven's sake, we've got to speed up the process of issuing new HGV licences to get new talent into the game as well.
Well, it's not just a global issue, is it, Moya? There is a specific issue in this country of specific labour shortages. HGV we've talked about, poultry workers we know about, butchers, abattoir workers, which were really dominated by those coming from abroad, which takes us to the Metro, come save our bacon, the U-turn to try to get EU meat workers back into the UK.
Yes, it seems like every week we're seeing one of these stories, is it not? We need about 500 butchers, and so there's been a massive U-turn. The story's run on for a while now. Boris at first responded to it by making jokes. Now he's actually decided that, you know, we're going to issue these 6-month visas for workers to come in and staff abattoirs because of the build-up of pigs, basically. And it's really difficult. I think what we're seeing is farmers have been struggling since Brexit. The pandemic has compounded that. And it feels very disrespectful on the part of Boris Johnson to have been making these jokes, do a U-turn and still not offer any sort of long-term support for this industry, which is at an absolute rock bottom. And he supposedly wants to make this the bedrock of post-Brexit Britain. But all we're seeing is a disrespect.
Yes, I mean, is that true, do you think, that this government's become overly reactive and not proactive? George Eustace today saying that he's been speaking to those in the pig farming industry for the last 10 days. They've been warning about this for way beyond 10 days, haven't they, Alex? You know, do they need to get on top of some of these things?
Well, my instinct is that actually this is how Brexit's supposed to work, that there is a need in the workforce, and then using discrimination in the proper sense of the word, the UK calls upon those that we want to come and serve a labour need in our market. You might say that's taking back control. Rather than having an open door, the door is open to those who have specific qualities or qualifications that the UK needs. On your point, I mean, George Eustace knows the agricultural industry exceptionally well, farmer himself, and I'm sure that the government has been on top of these questions. But of course, in the end, part of the unprecedented movement of labour, not just in this country and Brexit related, or even just in Europe, but around the world, has been affected profoundly by coronavirus. People returning home who used to send remittances home because they wanted to be close to their families and they wanted to be with them in tough times. We've seen this all around the world, in Asia, huge population movements in India and in China. So that really is a global issue. You can argue that we're not getting our response completely right. I'm not sure any state is in the current pandemic, post-pandemic environment, but specific visas for specific workers at specific times, that's exactly how Brexit's supposed to work. Yeah, but the problem is you don't click your fingers and presume they come, because as we've seen with the HGV visa offer, that has not happened, Alex. Yeah, well, you've got to make it attractive, right? So back to the point that Moya was making rightly, not just about working conditions, which is something for us as a country to address, but also about pay. And who's been urging those employers to pay their staff more? The government. So actually, you're right, you don't click your fingers and get it to happen. But I do think you also, you've got to look to what the government is doing right, as well as what you would say it's doing wrong. I still say you can go further. I think we could have tax cuts to incentivise people to come and work in the United Kingdom, let them keep more of their own money and make us more attractive from that perspective. But yes, I think government's doing the right thing on this.
OK, instead of pay for visas and accommodation, which some have said will run to the very many tens of thousands. So we've done HGV drivers crisis, some might say. We've done supply crisis. We're moving on to energy crisis now. The cost of gas, obviously, of real concern for consumers and for businesses. And Kwasi Kwarteng in both the FT and the Telegraph, in fact, suggesting that he has seen documentation showing we're in for a mild winter, windy, wet and mild, which might ease the cost of living fears of those rising gas prices, Moya.
I can't imagine anyone could read the story and not think anything but scornful thoughts. It is absolutely laughable to me that we have a government minister saying it's OK about these rising living costs because we're going to rely on the mercy of the weather to struggle through the bleak midwinter. It does not make sense for the government, who hold the purse strings and have the ability to support households this winter, to be bleating about mild weather as a get-out clause. There's roughly, I think, 8,500 deaths a year due to cold temperatures in winter. It was up 20% in 2020. So that was considered a mild winter. Even a mild winter caused the pipes in my house to freeze. What is going to happen to those who can't afford to heat their homes?
Well, the FT says Mr Kwarteng showed the energy suppliers a Met Office briefing. I know we all want to know the forecast, which said for the late winter period from January to February 2022, the most likely scenario is for an unsettled period of wet, windy and mild spells. But one official said our plan to protect consumers isn't based on weather outlooks. Whatever happens, the energy price cap will remain in place to shield consumers from high global gas prices, because the real fear is that the next time the energy price cap changes, it will go up by what, up to another £400 when it's next reviewed? Alex, you're talking big money for people now.
Yeah, well, look, he's not wrong that the weather is important, is he? We know that that plays a significant role in everything from NHS hospital admissions to our ability to provide gas and fuel to people's homes. But the bigger problem here, which I think is twofold, is the one that you've identified about gas prices, which means that a lot of businesses can't stay afloat with the current international price they're paying for basic commodity at the price they're allowed to sell it in the UK market, problem one. And problem two, that we don't have enough long-term reserves. And when I say long-term, I mean weeks, not months or years. Ever since we closed Rough, which was the last real gas facility in the UK for storage on any significant scale, we've had a far smaller gas capability in our storage systems than any other developed country. And if you take those things together, it adds up to a potentially really big problem. Because if that bet is wrong about the weather and we go short on fuel, then you've got a real problem. And in the end, if we think we're going to be able to rely on things like LNG imports from abroad, part of that gets shut down because we then get outbid by other countries who draw the ships to them. They're closer and they pay more, so the shipping companies break their contracts and go there. In the end, in part, this is due to our rush to decarbonise, which has been done for the best possible motives, but we've done it as a country. At the same time, we haven't invested enough in nuclear. We haven't really invested enough in our resources and in our ability to maintain supply even for weeks in things like gas. And it's coming now, I'm afraid, to bite us.
Well, gas storage has been on the agenda for years, hasn't it? So I'm not sure that the decarbonisation had anything to do with that. But you know, it's an interesting in-tray for Boris Johnson when he hits his desk come Friday morning, certainly. Stay there, lots more still to come, including the Queen's green anger. Her Majesty backs Prince William in criticising world leaders for all talk and no action.
I'm Greg Milam, Sky's US correspondent here in Los Angeles.
Can you go away?
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world.
police have just made their first move and they've gone in firing tear gas.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. There are hundreds of these turbines. There are thousands more across Gansu. That's what's left of the North Tunnel, where the North Koreans exploded 5 nuclear warheads. And this is a show of strength at a time when China is more fragile than it has been at any time in recent years. Shrapnel from that explosion, so you can see it littered along all the way. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. The train station and the airport, they're both closed. We're not sure about the roads. We've seen reports that they are being blocked by police, so we're going to try and find a way out of Wuhan. After 5 days stranded here, this is deliverance. We help you understand the world with us. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Beijing.
Cercando as áreas, limpando as áreas e progressivamente avançando com os plantios. Isso daqui é uma sentença de morte para os manguezais.
Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, as you can see, the politics editor, of Gal-dem, Moya Lothian-Mclean, and the PR consultant, Deane. Great to see both of you back. So, Yorkshire Post, not surprisingly, leading once again on the resignation of the North Yorkshire Police and Crime Commissioner, Philip Allott, who made some rather unwise suggestions over the murder of Sarah Everard.
He made ridiculous suggestions about women being streetwise. I mean, first of all, victim shaming is completely wrong. But second of all, what is a victim like this supposed to have done? If she'd been streetwise and been able to ascertain the identity of the person who'd accosted her, it would have revealed that he was indeed legitimately a policeman. So what would that possibly have served? He's quite right to have resigned, but it's a perverse outcome for someone who makes stupid comments like this to go, whilst the person who presides over the force concerned gets renewed, who's made equally stupid comments, like jumping on a bus if an officer stops you and you feel unsafe. That Metropolitan Police Commissioner gets renewed in office for 2 years. So whilst it's right he's gone, I still think there's a lot to be done with the police force. And
Mr Allott suggesting that, accepting he had a loss of trust, wanted to build it back again, that people shouldn't be penalised for saying one bad thing in a live interview, effectively, Moya.
I mean, they're saying one bad thing in a live interview and there's making, the comments that he made at such a delicate, sensitive time. I think what it also shows is that the issues we've been talking about, they're sort of endemic to the policing structure, go all the way up to police commissioners. And I think it's interesting. I've heard a lot about police commissioners and their role recently, which was obviously brought in 2010, and how sometimes it's a sort of party political allegiance. That means police commissioners get elected according to which party they represent. Allott was a Conservative commissioner, as opposed to perhaps who is really best for the job. So I do think it might be worth looking at that system as well and whether it's actually functioning as it should be.
Let's go to the Daily Mirror. It's also the lead for The Times as well, which reports that President Xi of China is not coming to Glasgow, something I think we probably already knew. But in the comments, they say the Queen was caught on microphone at the Senedd on Thursday, expressing concern that it was unclear who would be attending. In the comments caught by the microphone, I've been hearing all about COP. Still don't know who is coming. No idea. We only know about people who are not coming. It is very irritating when they talk, but they don't do. You got to...
I wonder if that's really an accident. If it's not treason of me to speculate. The royal family, for a long-standing institution, they really get the PR right sometimes, don't they? And perhaps that's why they're so long-standing as an institution. This is the Queen being very on message with current thinking, and moreover with the thinking of her son, who will be our king, and with her grandson, who will one day be our king too. I think that this is a remarkably astute bit of accidental commentary.
OK, and Prince William, of course, already criticising space tourism. He's launching his Earthshot. Prince Charles, as we know, as you mentioned, has been long committed to the cause, all of them heading up to Glasgow as well. 100 world leaders, but no President Xi. We will see, shan't we? They're sending no doubt a diplomatic delegation.